Hey everyone, welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. Today's guest is someone every UGC creator needs to hear from. I'm joined by Jim Ying, a 20-year gaming industry veteran who's worked at Xbox, Gree, and Tango, and now leads at Mihada Capital, where he helps game studios and creators sell their companies and secure investments. He's been a part of some of the biggest gaming acquisitions you've probably never heard about, and in this episode, he breaks down how deals actually happen behind the scenes, from the first message to the final payday.
Like most founders, they sell one. Maybe serial entrepreneurs will sell 2 or 3 companies, but the vast majority only sell one. And so it really wasn't until I got into this and started running some of these processes on the investment banking side that you get an understanding of kind of what actually goes on behind the curtains when you kind of see these announcements of the company or a game get sold.
We also talk about the rise of UGC acquisitions and what will happen when studios start buying Fortnite and Roblox games at scale.
Once you open up IAP though, and you can actually sell goods and you have a certain rev share off of that. And so I think it'll increase their interest level in Fortnite because now they have some of these levers at their disposal.
And finally, Jim gets real about the emotional roller coaster of selling your company and what happens the day after the deal closes.
Most folks, they sell one company in their lifetime, and it's something that they've spent years building. So like the thought of selling what they've built is a big emotional decision in itself. The vast majority, let's say 90+% of the sellers that I kind of go back 3, 6, 9 months, a year, most of them are happy that they sold.
Whether you're building your first map or running a UGC studio, this episode is packed with insight you won't get anywhere else. Let's dive in.
This is Creative Juice.
All right, I think we're started. How's it going, Jim?
Great. Hey, thanks for taking the time to do this. Yeah, excited to be on.
Dude, thank you for taking the time. This is, I think, one of the most maybe valuable episodes for creators in the UGC space or in the gaming space. You know, we've known each other for a while. I know we've run into each other at events and have talked before, but you know, a lot of creators don't know how any of this works. So again, really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, no worries. And it definitely is kind of selling your game or selling the company. It's something that people think about, but until you actually go through it, you know, it's hard to kind of grasp what the full process is and kind of the challenges. Because the reality is, like most founders, they sell one. Maybe serial entrepreneurs will sell 2 or 3 companies, but the vast majority only sell one. And so it really wasn't until I got into this and started running some of these processes on the investment banking side that you get an understanding of kind of what actually goes on behind the curtains when you kind of see these announcements of the company or a game get sold.
Yeah. No, again, we have some awesome questions. I can't wait to dive into them. So let's just get started, Jim. So, you know, you've worked with lots of creators and studios over the years, and I think every game developer probably has wondered about this at some point. So like, let's just start, I guess, with the big one. Okay. So when does a creator actually know it's the right time to sell their studio or game? Is it like after their first hit, once you hit a certain milestone, or, you know, when growth starts to kind of maybe slow down?
Yeah. You know, I think for when's the right time to sell, it really is you want to kind of marry when from the creator side or the game developer side, their priorities align with what the buyers are looking for and when they're looking to buy, right? Because ultimately, in order for something to sell, you need to have something, a seller, you need to have the buyer. So I think a lot of the game developers and creators, when they do think about this, they think about, all right, what are my priorities? Like, am I okay selling now? Do I want to keep working on this? What else could I do? But they also have to keep in mind, like, who are the buyer pools out there? What are their priorities? Why might they be interested in what I'm building? And then I think it's getting that timing right. Because let's say if you're looking to sell your map, but there's no buyers that are looking in this ecosystem, the deal's not going to get done, right? Or if, let's say, you're a little bit too early, but you're excited to sell, but most of the buyers are looking for something later, there's not that match, right? So I'd say, for the sellers, you know, have I kind of built this at a scale where if I know what the valuations are and the multiples out there, and that I can sell it at a number that I'm happy walking away with what I've created, then that might be kind of a good time to consider. Or kind of you see activity going on out there, you're like, yeah, maybe I should talk to some of the buyers. But for many of the buyers, it's also some of the considerations that going on in their heads, like, hey, is this a space that I want to get into? How big of a deal does it have to be before it makes a material impact on my business? Yeah, so I say, those are some of the considerations.
Yeah, no, great answer. And it's like a perfect lead up into the next question. Assuming a studio does decide to sell, like probably the next thing everyone wants to know is what the buyer is actually looking for. So like when a publisher or platform is considered an acquisition, what are the first things they look at? And like, what's that one thing creators think matter, but maybe doesn't?
Yeah, I think, of course, it'll matter differently by the type of buyer, right? So in the gaming ecosystem, I'd say ballpark, maybe there's 30 to 50 different strategic buyers out there, right? And some of them only focus on mobile, some of them only PC console, some of them are financial PE buyers that are looking for a kind of high level of revenue and profitability. And I think relative, particularly to the creator UGC space, so it's folks within the UGC space. There's a certain lot of deal activity that happens within Fortnite or Roblox itself. And there's some of the, let's say, larger strategics that are starting to explore into this space. Like they realize that there's a lot of kind of players that are playing this space and they need to have some footprint in so they don't miss the boat on this. So I'd say I'll kind of talk about the standard buyer, right? The types of things that they're looking for are financial scale. So a game or a game company needs to be at a certain financial scale before it's probably relevant to them, right? So if you're making like 10, 50K a month, it might be a little bit on the small scale for some of these larger strategics. For someone who's looking into initial footprint, then maybe it might be interesting. But for many of the bigger buyers out there, you probably need to have several 100,000 revenue per month before it really starts to catch their eye. One is they'll look to have some sort of stability in your past historical financials, right? Most of them, if you think about what from their perspective, what they're looking for is they want to buy something and then anticipate that it'll preferably grow, at a minimum, not kind of fall off a cliff. So generally, they won't want to acquire something that's kind of a flash in the pan, or let's say the revenue just spiked in the last month or so, unless it's a genre or platform that they're very, very familiar with, and they can anticipate what's going to happen. In the UGC space, particularly because this is a relatively newer space for a lot of the larger gaming strategics, they'll probably look at maps that have been out for several months, if not a year plus. And then also thinking about moving ahead, certainly if they're looking in this space, whether it's whatever platform, they're bullish on that platform. But then they need to anticipate that they'll be able to bring some secret sauce, like whether it's like a mobile game developer that's looking to bring some of their live ops or in-app purchase experience into either Roblox or Fortnite. They want to know that there's some sort of synergy or strategy that's moving forward. Right? People like to say this, but certainly the cultural fit and the team fit certainly is important. Okay, and it depends on the type of deal. Like if you're only selling a game, then maybe the cultural fit isn't as critical because there's going to be some sort of transition period, but then ongoing, they're going to have their own team work on it. Whereas for a lot of the larger, let's say mobile or PC console game acquisitions, they need the team in order to stick around and continue building that. And it may be the case in UGC also, right? And in that case, it is very much about like, all right, what is the vibe we get from the conversations, preferably sometimes in person or over Zoom, where they're like, all right, this is someone that I can work with or a team that I can work with moving forward.
And that makes sense. That was going to be a follow-up question, because I think, maybe even just not just Fortnite, obviously UGC or some of these platforms that people are looking to get into, they might not know the nuances of running, or maybe they do. I guess it depends on the buyer of running a game and keeping it successful on that specific platform. And I always found that fascinating, but generally, I guess if that was the case, they would, and they didn't have maybe a good team fit or they saw something where they could plus that game up themselves, which is another point would be interesting to talk about, is about Fortnite's in-game purchasing coming here within in a month. But all those things that encompass that, like buying a game, it's definitely, I think, a lot of back and forth, like you said. I've done that. I have sold a company. I've been involved in some of these conversations. And so, yeah, like what is your take on that? Like right now, like there's a lot of games that, especially in Fortnite, let's just use Fortnite because it's already in Roblox. There's app purchases, but like the Fortnite ecosystem, the creators, the teams, a lot of them aren't, have never maybe even dealt with this in-game purchasing thing. So, is that something you think right now that it might be a good time to have these conversations with like yourself or or
Yeah,
others?
I think it is because there's certainly when you open up these types of tools, there's the upside potential for a lot of these games increases significantly, right? I think part of the reason why you've seen more M&A and game sale activity happen within Roblox versus Fortnite is because some of that potential is already there, and the developer scale is just like bigger on Roblox right now.
Yeah.
And you have a lot more levers to pull in terms of what you can do in order to increase revenue or engagement. Whereas, 2-day Fortnite, Epic has their black box of revenue, and in theory, it's kind of correlated with engagement and new users, but you don't really know for certain, right? Once you open up IAP though, and you can actually sell goods and you have a certain rev share off of that, it's a lot more predictable in terms of what your revenue might be. And for some of the strategics from outside of the UGC space, this is kind of their bread and butter. Like they know how to release items, they know how to run live events that incorporate some of these items. And so I think it'll increase their interest level in Fortnite because now they have some of these levers at their disposal, whereas previously they didn't. So I think it's great that Epic finally came around to opening up these levers for the developers to play with. And I do think you will see more interest, and hopefully from the creators on and UGC developers on Fortnite, they'll recognize there is a certain level of expertise that they don't have right now because they haven't had to have it, right? So whether that's selling their map to a strategic that they can partner in the mid to long term, or maybe you could also be hiring someone from, let's say, the mobile space or from the PC console space so that you can get up and going.
Yeah. No, that's a good call out, man. That's a good point. So you've probably seen this process play out a dozen times. So I'd love to get into what it actually looks like behind the scenes. Like, can you walk us through a real acquisition from start to finish? Who makes the first move? How long does it take? And like, what happens between the pitch and the play day? The payday. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. So I'd say whether it's an investment raise or an M&A or an asset sale, the process is not all that different, right? So the 3 stages generally are, there's the initial inbound or outbound kind of outreach. There's the deal negotiation and getting to the broad terms. And then there's the due diligence and the long form agreement, closing the transaction. Right? I think later on we can get to some, and I can break that out in more detail and how we get involved in all of that. But I'd say that's the high level and what this process looks like.
Okay. Yeah. We'll definitely get more into it. So that's like a little foreshadowing. I love it. So, I want to kind of talk about not everything that goes smoothly all the time, right? Like some fall apart for reasons maybe that could have been avoided. So what's like the biggest mistake you see creators make when they're trying to sell their company? Like how can they avoid losing out on, maybe a life-changing opportunity?
I've done probably, 15, 20 of these transactions, and you do start seeing the recurring challenges and issues that come up, right? So one that I see is a lot of times when sellers are considering this, they'll have these one-on-one conversations with the buyers. Right? So there'll be inbound interest, or let's say you meet someone at a conference, or someone makes an intro, they express interest in buying your game or company, and then you have that one-on-one conversation. And that's kind of like natural human tendency. Like, did I start that conversation first? As opposed to running more of a competitive process and talking to many folks at the same time, right? Because what tends to happen is they have this one conversation, and sometimes it works out, right? But a lot of times, something surfaces where either the buyer walks away or you discover you're not interested anymore. And in that sense, you kind of wasted a lot of that time. Whereas it definitely is the case, similar to when you're buying or selling anything. If you're able to talk to a lot of buyers at the same time, you save yourself a bunch of time. You're able to get the best terms. And so it's much better to, if you're actually considering a sale, to just talk to the pool of relevant buyers out there so that you are running a competitive process and you're able to get the best terms. Right? So that's one, where people tend to sequence it one at a time. One doesn't work out and they start with another, and it's just inefficient with your time, right? And also inefficient with getting the best outcome. Related to that is, having these conversations does take up a lot of time, right? And so folks will sometimes lose focus on their core business or their core game. And if that goes down, then maybe the existing buyer loses interest, they walk, or kind of the future prospects. It takes a while to kind of pick your business back up, and you've lost momentum in the meantime. So getting distracted from your core business because of the sale process. And, I'd say another one is not having your data and your materials ready, right? Because through these enough, what's the type of information they're going to ask for, right? They're going to ask for a P&L. They're going to ask for what your historicals look like. Ask for your pipeline, what your plans are, some of these. And if you don't have these in place, then the buyer will ask you. You'll need to spend like a week or two putting all these materials together. You send it over. They ask you the next batch of questions, and it just slows down the process. And one thing is I've learned over time is that time is actually one of the biggest killers of these deals, where you want to basically strike when the iron is hot, the buyers are interested. If you're taking too much time in answering questions, then they get distracted looking at other prospects, and the deals basically break apart. So those are some of the more common mistakes. Actually, here, I'll name one. I think one is waiting too long and trying to sell at the peak of your business. Okay. If you think about when sellers want to sell, like they want to sell when their game is the biggest possible, but it's very, very hard to identify when that time is.
Yeah.
And then let's say your game is growing, that's when buyers are going to come knocking, and that's when their risk level is going to be the highest. Now, let's say you wait a little bit too long and the game starts flattening out or starts going down, then not only do the number of buyers fall off, but then the multiples or the valuations that they're willing to pay will also fall off. And so, a lot of sellers will wait a little bit too long, and you're kind of past that peak. And then they're like, oh, I should have sold. I'm going to run a process now. But then the interest might not be there anymore.
Yeah.
So what I like to say is don't try to capture every single 100%, like the last few percentage points, because even if you sell when you can capture 75, 80, 85% of the value of what you might create, that 75, 80% is still life-changing to you. Right? Whereas that marginal 5, 10, 15% is not going to make a huge difference in the long run. Yeah.
That makes sense. Let's so recap. So like if you have multiple buyers, don't be, go that route. Don't waste time essentially just going one at a time. Make sure you keep your game going during this process. Don't let it fail. Make sure you have your materials. Have a good presentation, including your P&Ls and your financials, everything that goes into your game, your roadmaps and things. Probably presented nicely. You probably see some nice presentations and maybe not so nice. I think people should spend a lot of time on that. And then also don't wait too long. Don't wait for the perfect time, which is probably a good advice for a lot of things in life. But that is a great advice, Jim.
A great summary. This is why, to some degree, I like talking to game developers and creators earlier on, because then we can share kind of what we do, some of our learnings, so that they can keep it in the back of their mind. Even if the reality is, like, when I have these conversations, I'd say a good 75, 80%. Like, it's not the right time for them to sell, either because their business isn't quite scaled yet, or they've got upcoming things going on where it does make sense to wait a little bit, or maybe the buyer window isn't right for what they're building. But as long as they have these things in the back of their mind, then when the right timing comes, they can kind of reach out and have a conversation.
Yeah. No. So like on the flip side of this, like sometimes the deals that do happen maybe are like a total surprise. Like, have you ever seen a buyer appear like out of nowhere? Maybe a company nobody expected suddenly jumping in and like buying a studio. Like, what's the wild example that you've been a part of that you can obviously speak on? I know a lot, and Jim, I do want to say this really quick. Jim has to work around probably lots of NDA contracts, so I appreciate you being as candid as you can.
Yeah, sure. So it definitely is the case that when we run a process, there are surprising buyers that come out of the woodwork. I'd say for most transactions that we do, when we do outreach, you're talking to maybe 20 to 30 different buyers. right?
Wow.
And many of them are kind of the known gaming buyers. Like if you keep up with who's doing the M&A activity, many of these similar names will pop up. But at the same time, at any given moment, there's always different folks coming into the space and interested by it, right? So I'll give you an example. Historically, gaming companies have been acquired by other gaming companies. But then on the mobile side, maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago, there was a wave where many ad tech companies were acquiring gaming companies because they wanted the data. And so there's a lot of activity coming out of there. Or we did a deal recently where in the social casino space, so kind of, slots or poker, but not for real money. There was a period of time where real money gaming casinos were buying some of these social casino companies because they thought there might be cross promotional opportunities.
Okay.
One recent window that's opened up is in India, they passed legislation where real money gaming, which had been allowed, was no longer allowed. And now you have all these companies that raise significant sums of money or actually were generating a lot of revenue and profit. Are now looking to transition into other gaming spaces. And so they're looking at different things. So it definitely is the case that at any given time, there might be new buyers coming out of different sectors.
Yeah. Never know.
Exactly. So part of what we do is like we keep tabs and we have open lines of communication with a lot of the active buyers. But then because we are also talking to a lot of these other folks in other sectors, if they do express interest in gaming, then we can kind of run deals by them.
Very cool, man. We talked about indie devs a little bit. So like a lot of indie developers listening probably dream of one day building something worth acquiring. For those smaller teams or solo devs, like what's the roadmap to actually get there? This is probably maybe a hard question. Like what should they be thinking about from like the start if they want to build towards a sale?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I'd say the biggest is really focus on the game or focus on the map and scaling that successfully. If you are successful there, people will come knocking. And on the flip side, if that core business is not successful, any kind of research, any kind of outreach you do is not going to matter.
Yeah.
Here's an example. Like sometimes I'll come across developers and they're building out a game and they start thinking too far in advance. So like, we're going to make this an IP and we're going to start making a comic book and plushies about it. And they actually spend time doing that. Right? And in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of fun to have like a stuffed animal based off of your game. If your core game isn't successful, it's kind of wasted effort. Right? Or they're out there kind of attending a lot of gaming conferences and talking all sorts of buyers, pitching what they're building. But if you're actually not able to get your game to scale, none of these relationships are really going to matter all that much. So I'd say the biggest is focus on your game, focus on your map, make sure it's successful, do your market research as to what other successful companies in the space are doing, what you can learn. I'd say that's probably the biggest one in terms of, advice.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, when you're getting to your level where someone's interested in acquiring your game, I mean, you definitely need to come with something. You can't just, I'm sure a lot of people, and I've seen it myself, right? They have a good game maybe or something that's taken off a little bit, but they have all these like extras, like, but we're going to add plushies, it's going to add this or that. And you've seen it a million times and that may work at some point. But I mean, if you look at the top Roblox games, I mean, Brocade, I think some of them have plushies, but I mean, you're talking about games that are massive scales. Like I think to sell any IP, like sell toys or any of that stuff, that is a tough road to get to that point.
Yeah, so there's definitely a moment at which that kind of stuff makes sense, right? Once you are scaled, then you're looking at how do I diversify away from my kind of one single revenue stream and the platform risk. So like one thing that developers on Fortnite and Roblox, there's a greater issue to them to the degree is that there is still a lot of platform risk or platform control, right? Whereas their revenue is completely captive to these platforms and these platforms can at their whim change their kind of revenue payouts. And they don't want to do it too frequently because they don't want to scare away either the game developers or other folks that are looking to build on it, but it still is the case. Whereas, on mobile, on PC console, it's just a little bit more established. At the end of the day, yes, they can still fit around with things. Because there's a longer history there, they tend not to. So
that makes sense.
when you get to a scale like a Brookhaven, and and you're looking to diversify your revenue streams, then yeah, maybe you can look at some of the things.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good problem to have, and it's a problem that you focus on later on.
Yes, exactly. Stay with your core business, what you're good at, and keep building your brand, make it something that's attractive, and build from there.
Yeah,
I guess.
actually, on the IP point though, and this is particularly relevant to some Roblox developers also, is at this point for most mobile and PC console developers, when they get into a new game, they will do the legwork up front to make sure that what they're building does not infringe on any IP, or they will be able to sell it later on. Whereas I think Roblox, because of the way, and maybe Fortnite to a lesser degree, because of the way a lot of these maps or experiences were initially created, and people weren't really thinking that they're going to be able to sell. There's things that are blatantly kind of IP ripoffs of others, and I think it's come back to bite some of those creators because when you have that potential IP infringement, it can scare away buyers and investors.
No, that makes sense. That's actually a good one. That's a good add on to make sure your game doesn't have these IP infringements. And I know there's lots of games that's maybe how their game starts getting successful. And so yeah, if they can look back at your game and seeing the trail ripping off other people, that's not going to be a good sign.
It can be a chicken and egg thing, right? Like maybe they got to be so big in the first place because they IP infringe and they were able to get these audience bases to engage in the map because of that. So yeah, it's easy to say afterwards, like, oh yeah, you shouldn't have done that. But at the time, like, I'm sure it was just folks that were thinking of ways like, all right, what can I create something that will get other people to play? I think A, they weren't thinking about the IP infringement issues, and B, it probably wasn't even anywhere in their frame that, hey, I'd be able to sell this at some point, and didn't even matter.
Yep. Yeah, no, definitely. And call back to I had Adam, the lawyer, the UGC lawyer on here. If you're listening right now and wanting to know more about Adam's awesome. More about this and IP infringement and what it can do and mean, you need to go watch that episode. But let's talk about selling a studio, and sometimes it isn't just business, right? Sometimes it's probably emotional too. Some people spend a lot of time, years. This is their baby. Like, what is it really like for a founder when the deal closes? I don't know if you have any insight here. Like, have you seen moments of regret, relief, or even shock when it's all done?
Yeah, I'd say it definitely is a roller coaster emotionally for a lot of these founders.
Yeah.
Right? Because like I mentioned before, like most folks, they sell one company in their lifetime, and it's something that they've spent years building. Right? It's blood, sweat, and tears. It's very, very stressful, and so like the thought of selling what they've built is a big emotional decision in itself. But in the process itself is also there's a lot of anxiety that occurs.
Yeah,
and then as the negotiations go on, there's a lot of ups and downs. So, part of, to some degree, of what we're able to do is because we're a neutral third party, we're able to say, hey, this is normal, this is part of the process, and kind of talk them down from some of the emotional cliffs.
Yeah.
But also kind of share a vision of what will happen down the line. And I'd say that, I'll start out with that for the vast majority, let's say 90+% of the sellers that I kind of go back 3, 6, 9 months, a year, touch base with, most of them are happy that they sold.
Right? Yeah.
Because some of them, the games or the companies have either flatlined or have gone down a little bit afterwards. And so there, in that case, it's definitely a good station that you sold. But yeah, it's very rare you see where folks are like, all right, I've sold and I wish I had held on. I wish I had stuck around.
Yeah.
Because here, in many of the deals, there is an earnout. So they're obliged to stick around for another year or two anyways. And, one thing I do commonly see is when they are running the process, they're like, oh, I want to stay around for like 5-10 years. But the reality is once you've sold the company, once you've sold the company and to some degree, someone else is on the controls, many of these entrepreneurs, their personal kind of characteristics are just like, they like being the boss. There's a reason why they started their own company.
I feel like you're talking about me right now.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot of folks out there. So I'd say it's definitely the case, but there are a lot of ups and downs. So whether it's I'll give an example of my various stages, right? So in the early mid stages, generally when we do the outreach, and let's say there's 10 or 15 different parties that are interested, and then you jump on calls with all of them, and the buyers can see, oh, there's so many folks that are interested, it's definitely going to sell. And then people start declining. And it's inevitable this happens. And if anything, it's a process that you want. You want the buyers to be whittled down to those who truly do see value in it, are willing to bid a good price for it, right? The folks who are going to bid low or the folks who are not interested, you don't want those to be the buyers, and you don't want the baby that you've built, and you'd have to work with them because it's just not going to be a successful partnership, right?
Yeah.
But from the seller's perspective, when they see people start dropping off, they're like, oh, is it because what I built is not that great? Or it just creates a lot of stress where we're able to tell them, hey, this is just a normal part of the process, and it's a part of the process that you actually want, right? You don't want to be talking to like 5 or 7 parties at the same time, because it's just the waste of time, and it's going to distract you from your core business. And so that's one kind of emotional element. Another, as I say, during the negotiations itself, like many of the buyers, as larger companies, they have either big law firms or multiple lawyers in-house, and they're looking to protect against all the edge cases and the contingencies. And so they'll kind of really drill into various legal parts of the agreement, which the reality is like 99% of this stuff is never going to happen. But they need to protect against those edge cases. Similarly, as the seller, you want to bring an experienced lawyer on hand so that they are, on your behalf, kind of drilling into these edge cases and protecting you. But for a entrepreneur who, I think many of them are successful because they're able to, it's kind of like the 80-20 rule. Like, I'm just going to do whatever that works. And it's like the edge cases I'm not going to worry too much about until they actually happen. That cultural mentality does not align well with the mentality you need to have when you're negotiating some of these long-form agreements. Right? And so people just get frustrated. Like, why are they asking about this? It's never going to happen. And to some degree, you need to, as a banker, we shield them from that. And the lawyer, we shield them from all that minutia so that you can keep the focus on, all right, you still want this deal to happen. The high-level structures are there that you're happy with. Let's let the rest of the team figure out these details.
No, that's another great point too. I think for sure is the protection of the law, lawyers and that whole process that can be very lengthy. And then if you've never been through any of that stuff, having someone like you or your team on their side can definitely help that and maybe save lots of headaches. But I know exactly what you're talking about. There's so many different things that you go back and forth. It takes months. Like, hey, we're gonna, if we do go to legal, it has to be here. It's just like all these little things that it's just like, you're right, probably never will happen. But it's always this, jockeying of what.
And there's multiple situations where I've been through where sometimes I've been like, I can't believe they're asking about this. Let's just walk away, right? If they're asking about this, then they clearly don't understand the business, or like it's insulting to me that they think that. That they think I'm going to do this. And so like, I'm just going to walk away. And so like, that's when you have to like talk those down. You know what? It's these edge cases that everyone needs to protect for. They don't really think you're going to do this.
Yeah. There's a lots I'm sure that goes into this. A lot of people like hear the term, investment banker thrown around in these deals. But not like everyone knows exactly what that role actually entails. Can you break down what your role looks like in a studio or a game sale and how you help creators navigate that process?
Okay, sure. So, I think at its core for sell-side investment banking, it's basically helping to manage the process and get the optimal terms for the seller in selling their company. Now, there's also the capital raising and the strategic advisory side of it, but I'd say for many Fortnite or Roblox developers, that part isn't as critical, right? Because there's not much fundraising done in Roblox or Fortnite. So let's focus on the kind of sell side.
Okay.
And A side. So when you're looking to sell a map or sell the company. If I break it, I tend to break up kind of where we help out most of the 3 different categories. One is knowing who the buyers are and being able to reach out directly, right? Because we do this day in and day out and we're running several deals at the same time. We know who the active buyers are. We know who the decision makers are. We know who the corp dev teams are. And so we have ongoing conversations with them all the time as to, all right, what is it that you're looking for? What are the criteria? What are their profiles? And then when we do have a relevant opportunity, we can go to the right ones. And it's not just the companies, but actually the people within those companies to know, all right, who are the decision makers and who should review this first. We both value maintain these relationships. And so when I send something their way, they generally will take a look. That's the first part. Knowing who the buyers are and kind of how to outreach to them. The second part is essentially managing the process and the headache, taking the headache off of the seller's hands. Right? So imagine it is a stressful process. And again, similar to when you're selling anything, if you're able to get more buyers at the table when you're looking to sell it, you can typically get better terms. You're also able to compare apples to apples in terms of the offers that are on the table, as opposed to doing it sequentially where you're just not able to. So an investment bank will help run a process so that the outreach is all around the same time, the calls are around the same time, the data and the materials you're preparing you only have to do once so that you're not constantly updating it, and then running a tight process to try to get some offers in a set time period where it just doesn't run on indefinitely.
Yeah.
And taking all of that and the headache off the buyer's hands or the seller's hands. And I'd say the third part is negotiating and hand-holding through to close. And there's the stressful part of it. There's also, inevitably, there's going to be issues that arise. It's kind of like, I think what they say about like families, like every happy family looks about the same, but it's like I don't even know what to say. It's like every family has their issues. They all look different.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So like every deal, there's challenges and road bumps that arise. And having gone through it as many times as we have, we see similar patterns emerge and then potential solutions for how to get around them. And so being able to walk the seller through some of these issues because of our experience and get them to actually the finish line where they're selling the map or the game, I'd say that's a significant value add also.
Yeah.
So I'd say, yeah, that's kind of like, so in summary, like those, I'd say the three key areas where working with investment banker really helps out.
Makes sense. Yeah, that there is so much that goes into that. I don't think a lot of people understand, and I think I really wanted to have you come on because I actually have been asked in person and in my comments, like, how do you sell a game? How do you get a quality? This is like obviously seasoned developers or whatever, they kind of maybe understand this process, but a lot of newer, especially in the UGC space where you see all these little teams and studios and games pop up and do well, it's kind of a mystery, right? So again, I really appreciate you coming on, Jim, and sharing so much. And we have a few more questions, but we're getting close. So before we do wrap, I want to make sure the listeners who might be thinking about raising money or selling, like, know how they can actually connect with you. And of course, links in the description, of course. But like for anyone exploring capital partnerships or potential acquisitions, like what's the best way to work with you and, Mihada Capital? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Mihada Capital. Yep. Mihada.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So like how do they reach out to you?
So I'm active on LinkedIn. I can share my email, jim@mihadacapital.com. Feel free to just reach out. Here. I got into this not because I didn't actually come up through investment banking. Like I came in because I love playing games as a kid. I worked at gaming companies for 10, 15 years. So I think I understand the gaming ecosystem. I enjoy hearing what folks are working on and what's catching in the market and what the trends are. So even if kind of now's not the right time to sell, feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear what folks are working on.
Yeah, cool. And again, like I said, all those will be in the link of the description, so you can reach out however you want. So we have one last question. We're to close things out, and it's kind of a bold prediction, okay, on record. So I'm sorry I'm putting you on the spot. But in the next few years, do you think we'll see a big wave of UGC creators and small studios get acquired? And who do you think will be the major players leading the charge, maybe?
I'd say at this point, it's not even a bold prediction to say that it's going to happen. Like you're already starting to see it happen. We've been involved in a couple of conversations and deals. I think the exciting thing about gaming is that people love to play games, and it's about when new platforms emerge, then there's new creators and the news developers that take advantage of the technologies and the digital platforms and the ways to engage these players. Been in the gaming ecosystem long enough to see this wave. Like first it was PC console games, and then social games on Facebook, mobile games. There's some chat games. There's some tangents that happen like VR or 3. But one of the really hot areas and growing areas is UGC, like Roblox, Fortnite, coming up probably Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
And it's a combination of, these are the platforms where people can play and create their own content, but also like a younger generation where they're playing, right? So I've got 3 kids, 11, 13, 15-year-old. They play the hell out of Roblox and Minecraft and Fortnite. So you can see it's not just the game content that they're playing, but they're building their social networks and graphs and friendship groups, and they're jumping around from different experiences. So when you have new platforms like this emerge, then definitely for creators and big strategic gaming companies, these are things that they need to pay attention to. And I've seen this over and over again where new platforms emerge. Some of the early entrants, assuming they can kind of keep their pedal on the gas and learn from others and learn from other kind of platforms and cycles that have happened, they can become the next Zyngas, they can become the next EAs, they can become the next Scopelys of the ecosystem by kind of building things. And here, not everyone's going to be the consolidator in the space. It may be the case that you sell yours to someone else, but UGC definitely is one of those hot areas where there's a lot of players going on. There's a lot of revenue being created. So I think it's just only a matter of time. And we already know there's many gaming strategics that have asked us about interesting opportunities or have already transacted in the space.
Yeah, no, great answer. I agree. I think we're going to see a lot more acquisitions or a lot more games being acquired. And then, there's the who knows what Grand Theft Auto is going to bring. Meta is another one that's kind of interesting as well. I think once they figure out how to connect all their platforms together and promote games, that could be a big hitter as well. So yeah, there's going to be lots of opportunities for creators.
Yeah, and here it definitely is still in the early stages, and you're starting to see some strategics buy into this space. You're seeing consolidation within the UGC ecosystems themselves, but there's still a long way to go. Right? Yeah. And in terms of the sophistication of the buyers and the sellers, kind of where the comps and the multiples are settling and where the potential for some of these maps and platforms could be, there's still a ton of upside. So yeah, it's great to be involved in this space right now.
Yeah, I agree, man. I'm all in. So, but look, Jim, that's time. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing so much, man. I really do. Thank you so much.
All right, yeah, great to be on. It was a really fun conversation. Happy to have a chat with any folks out there who might be interested in learning more.
Yeah, thank you, Jim, man. We'll catch you maybe on another one, man. You have a good one.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
Huge thanks to Jim Ying for joining the show and breaking down the realities of selling games and studios. This conversation was eye-opening for anyone in UGC, and I hope it helps creators think long-term about how they grow their business. You can find Jim's links in the contact info in the description below. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a positive review on your favorite podcast app. It really helps out a lot. See you in a fortnight, which is in 2 weeks, and remember, don't hate, create.